Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have apparently re-engaged in negotiations regarding the next round of stimulus. And I say next round of stimulus, but really the future of a next round of stimulus is still uncertain. There have been some concessions by Steve Mnuchin, probably because he realized that so many of these major corporations are now doing mass layoffs, since the PPP money for small businesses has not only run out, but the rules tied to that money, which would essentially have these businesses keep their employees on staff, have expired. So now we're hearing about major companies laying off tens of thousands of people, and that's not a good look for Trump's reelection campaign. So Mnuchin's plan included $250 billion for state and local governments. Remember, that's something that they were absolutely against before, which is $186 billion less than Democrats want in their latest $2.2 trillion package, but $100 billion more than the White House offered in talks that broke down over the summer. Luckily, there's some emphasis on continuing unemployment benefits that are more robust through the help of the federal government, but it still falls short of what unemployed individuals received earlier with $600 a week. On unemployment insurance, Mnuchin proposed $400 per week in the federal benefit, retroactive to September 12th and lasting through January 1st, 2021. That's less than the $600 a week Democrats want, but $100 more than Senate Republicans have proposed. And again, Democrats have made their own concessions by lowering the cost of their initial stimulus bill to $2.2 trillion. But Mnuchin made it clear that the right wing will absolutely reject that proposal. And here he is making that statement on Fox Business.
We're not going to do a $2.2 trillion deal. The good news is the speaker has come down from her $3.4 trillion deal. If there's a fair compromise, we're prepared to do it.
A fair compromise, yet within that, as I understand the bill that could have been voted upon tonight, there would be no money now for law enforcement as there was in the earlier higher package that Pelosi had presented to you. That's now absent. It seems to be going, at least in a number of elements, the wrong direction. 2.2 is still vastly higher than the number that the president wants. What is there a median number here that is magical in terms of reaching agreement?
Well, the president instructed us to come up significantly. So we have come up from the $1 trillion deal that we had been working on earlier. He's very focused on wanting to make sure that all the people who have been impacted by COVID, no fault of their own, we're delivering relief. As I've said before, our job is not done until we get everybody back to work, and we're going to keep trying.
So Cenk, I love how Lou Dobbs is like, oh, this is going in the wrong direction. We're going to help poor people and less funding for law enforcement. What are we doing? Like, he's such a terrible person. But anyway, go ahead.
You know, in this case, if you just cared about politics, the sides are backwards. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you're the president, you should want a stimulus bill as large as humanly possible a month before the election, so that the economy can get stimulated, whether it's overstimulated, whether it's a bubble, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether it's based on your Republican principles or not. You should want to inject as much money into the economy and honestly get all the voters $1,200 check right before the election. Are you crazy? It's a no-brainer. But they're Republicans, they can't help themselves. So they're like, I don't want to give it to average Americans. I just don't want to. And you're giving it to states and you're giving it to people who are unemployed. Can't we just give it to the rich again? Damn it, I don't want to do this deal. They're nuts not to do the deal. And then on the other side, I guess in a sense, give the Democrats credit because they really are trying to get money to all those folks, the unemployed states, et cetera, when they're kind of nuts to do the deal before the election. And I'm glad they're doing it because you got to get relief to those people. So I care 1,000 times more about the policy than I do about politics. But the opposition party giving the president a month before the election a $1,200 check to hand out to almost all Americans. It's not politically savvy, but again, I'm not blaming them for it. I think it's actually principled. I'm giving them credit for it.
I hear what you're saying, Cenk. It's just that the House had passed a stimulus bill months ago. And my issue with how Nancy Pelosi handled that situation was she thought that all she could do, or all she should do, is just simply pass a bill and then sit around and think that Americans are going to figure out that this bill is being blocked by Mitch McConnell. Like, sure, there are people who realize that, there are people who know that. Would you argue that the majority of Americans know that? Of course they don't. She had to make her case. She had to use the bully pulpit in order to basically call out the Republican Party and the fact that they've been blocking this bill for months. Instead, she was just, I don't know what she was doing, calling press conferences to talk about how a salon allegedly set her up. She'll hold a press conference for that, but she won't hold a press conference. And she should have done it on the regular, calling out Steve Mnuchin, the Trump administration, and more importantly, Mitch McConnell for blocking a more robust version of the stimulus bill much earlier. So I also want to note that the economic ramifications of Congress's inaction are pretty serious, and we're starting to see it now. So as I talked about yesterday on the show, a number of companies announced that they would be laying off tens of thousands of workers. Disney said that it'll lay off 28,000 employees across its parks, experiences, and consumer products divisions amid prolonged closures at its California-based theme parks, as well as limited attendance. And that's according to their own statement. They also say that 67% of their laid off workers were part-time. A number of their employees actually reached out to me via social media. They asked to remain anonymous. But the right-wing talking point in regard to the Disney layoffs has been, it's Gavin Newsom. He's destroying businesses by having these social distancing guidelines and urging companies and businesses to remain closed amid the pandemic. But these employees are saying, no, we want to be safe. We actually do not disagree with what Gavin Newsom wants to do. We don't want to get sick, but they obviously do need financial assistance, which Congress has really failed on. And the airline industry has laid off 30,000 employees. The list goes on and on and on. And so I think Republicans and the Trump administration realize the seriousness of this moment, not necessarily because they care about the American people and their well-being, but because this could really hurt them in this upcoming election.
So Anna, we could have reopened Disney and so many other businesses, at least the theme parks, if we had done testing and tracing, which is what the rest of the world did. I was gonna say developed world, but really almost all of the rest of the world except us. We're now basically a fourth world country, worst in deaths, worst in cases, worst in so many things. We barely do any contact tracing at all in America. Whereas New Zealand, South Korea, Taiwan are excellent at contact tracing, so is Germany. So that way you can quarantine a much smaller group of people rather than shutting down the whole economy. It's a win-win. You keep your health is better off, and so is your economic health. But you would need a smart, competent leader to do that, and not a psycho party like the Republicans in charge who don't do science and then go, screw the mask, don't worry about it. Let's just open without any precautions. So in this bill that we're talking about here, there's $75 billion for testing and tracing. So no matter what the politics of it is, I want it passed because we desperately need testing and tracing so we could reopen the economy, people can get their jobs back, and we could all go outside. There's also other great parts like rental and mortgage assistance. There's help for the airlines.
60 million for that.
Yeah, there's
60
paycheck
billion for
protection
that
program for small businesses. So, but your point on the earlier politics of it is indisputable. So I want to end on that. Guys, look, I'm giving the Democrats credit here for being principled, even though the optics of this is going to help Trump if they pass it. But it didn't have to help Trump. In fact, it should have been the opposite. If Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and every Democrat out there and Joe Biden we're all out there going, why aren't you passing the bill? The bill, my God, the small businesses, the testing, the tracing, the states, $1,200 checks. We demand that Trump pass it. And we're furious that Trump and the Republicans aren't passing it. By the time Trump agreed, then he wouldn't get credit for it. People would say, oh, the Democrats did a good job of breaking Trump and making him accept these things for the American people. But as usual, the Democrats are terrible at making their own case. So as Anna pointed out, they're talking about hair salons and Nancy Pelosi's personal business more than they are about this bill, so that when it passes, Trump will take credit for it. And people who don't follow the news closely, and those are the most important independent voters, will have no idea that the Democrats are on the right side of this.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.